What's up, brothers, sisters, truthers, 10-4 hatters, and woo seekers, Wookiees, time travelers, ghost hunters, and black goo creepers? Man, you know what time it is. It's Freaky Friday, January 26, 2018. And as always, we're transmitting the nothing but love signals out to the Wookie Cave at tfrlive.com/chat. And to everyone else out there listening on the FM frequencies at 90.7 in Denver, Colorado, 97.3 in Eugene, Oregon, or iHeartRadio listeners, and all around the world on this thing we call the net. I mean, it is on. First-time listeners catching this show 1,000 years from now. How does one woo, you might ask? Kick on back, and we will show you how. Welcome, lizard aliens, interdimensional beings, or an AI looking for some metadata, sky watchers, rain dancers, chupacabras, voodooers. It doesn't matter. What's up? Whoever, whatever, wherever you are, man. Kick on back. You're listening to Freaky Friday on TFR, True Frequency Radio. And here on the USS Freaky Friday is the usual suspect crew. Captain Woo himself, Kev Baker on the bridge. First Officer Joseph shredding it and detecting strange life forms in the Wookie Cave. Johnny Torpedoes locked and loaded whistles is here in spirit. Get better, brother, and beam us up. Scotty Lopez in the transporter room. I'm Kenneth Webb, lost in the holodeck web, a.k.a. YouTube's Change the Channel, who's been MIA for a moment, but has changed his red shirt in for a tan one. And man, oh man, gentlemen, are we ready for some freaky?
I know I am. I think.
Oh yeah, always good to hear that intro, man.
I just gotta know, man. And this is because that's some free flowing stuff. And by the way, folks, that's not scripted. He has no script. That's just totally free form. Wicked. That's what I'm saying.
I did different ones for different times, and I come up with different ones. But yeah, I do have a basic script here, Joe, that I go through.
Totally original. No, you know that. Come on, man.
It is original because I do different ones for different ones. Yeah. But it's always the same thing. We're here, and it does mean so much. In a broad way because we're transmitting on Freaky Friday, and this is like Halloween, holidays, any of these kinds of things out there. It's a big thing, and we're talking to all the people out there, and maybe people won't hear this for 1,000 years. Maybe there is interdimensional beings out there listening to the broadcast at different times, man. And the thing about it is as I gotta say, I missed you guys. And I'm so glad to be here with everybody out there. And because we get freaky on Friday, and it's okay to get freaky and talk about things that, people really don't want to talk about during the week. You get into politics, you get into all these kinds of things. But, there's so much going on that we do not know that's going on out there. And it's good to theorize and philosophize about these things and bring into some evidence that has been going on around the time. Man, and I love you guys. I just got to say that. I love each and every one of you out there, everybody on this panel right now, because, this is what keeps me going.
I know what you mean.
Do you think Ken's going to be back? This is going to be brilliant. And Joe, imagine you, right? Ken's only been away for a couple of weeks, and you forgot that brilliant line is scripted. But the rest of it, come on, man.
But the rest of it, no, there's a lot of just free flowing stuff going on there. Nothing I could do, dude. Oh God, I would totally butcher that. It would be horrible.
Shredding it, like Joe shredding it right now.
Yeah, you'd be totally shredding me. That's for sure, dude.
And of course,
no, you were. That's what we were talking about before we got on the show.
Oh no, yeah, absolutely, dude, like a cheese grater.
And since
that was
here, right, I'm going to do the chat room for him. So for Whistles, and we're all sending them much love from the Wookie Cave and beyond. We've got Dr. Kayak, Anthony Patch, Carol, changed the channels in there. In fact, you can find all of the Woo crew in the chat room at tfrlive.com/chat.
Yeah.
Chat George is in there. Yeah. We've got that Drone 3 Zone, Fractured. We've got a whole bundle of letters that I can't even pronounce. Hillbilly Hermit, Jabber Baby Wookie, Somebody, the Amish, Joe Joseph, Me, we've got Lizard Tongue, Lynn, we've got Mark, Microcosm, Millie, Nancy Lalonde, New Head Understand, Phyllis Lagan, Rebecca, Richie J. Jones, Rockin' Rio, Scotty Lopez, TFR Wookie, Valkyrie, and Who Said They Could. We've got 2B Me, Art Cavazaz, yeah, something like that, Astriana, Bison, Brian, Clay, C. Nelson, Don to you too, Del Boy, we've got Foil Haberdashery, Helen Gregg, His Grace, His Glory, Jeff Vanes, Lee, Little Giant, Loz Rick, Michael Thompson, Paula Deemsters, we've got Paul Boy, Rob, Slayer, Veronica, and last but not least, Mr. Joe, we have got the Waffle Buddy, all locked, loaded, ready to go. Another Freaky Friday awaits us. What have you got for us first tonight, Mr. Joseph?
Okay, so let's start out the night by discussing briefly what's been going on with the, of course, you know, we got Tony Patch on before us, so you always have this kind of woo. You know, you're talking about CERN, the, you know, kind of ripping the veil, that kind of stuff. Well, now over in China, they've built the world's most powerful super lasers that can actually rip holes in space. And when I tell you these things are powerful, I mean, I can't believe the type of power they're generating right out. I mean, on a desktop size device. That's how small they've got this stuff now, to the point where, you know, it really kind of, the way I understand it, this would kind of give them an alternative to a particle accelerator. As a matter of fact, particle accelerators like CERN would be obsolete if they kind of master this technology. Basically, out of Shanghai in China, this powerful laser, it's called the Shanghai Super Intense Ultra Fast Laser Facility. The machine's small enough to fit on a tabletop, contains a disc the width of a Frisbee, which is made of titanium-topped sapphires. So that's already kind of cool right there. I mean, who wouldn't want titanium-topped sapphires? I mean, it's amazing. But this small device, by pushing light through the crystal and refracting it off a series of mirrors and lenses, is able to produce unbelievable amounts of power. They set a record for lasers in 2016 when it produced a pulse of 5.3 petawatts. So if you don't know what a petawatt is a million billion watts. So to put that into contrast with something, let's take HARP, since we are in full tinfoil hat mode. So HARP was 1 billion watts of RF. And you could see what 1 billion watts of RF can do when you, want to trigger earthquakes or, change the weather. There's so many different things. You can heat the atmosphere and basically push it out farther into space to cause low Earth orbiting satellites to drag, and you could actually drag satellites down with a HARP. So that's just 1 billion watts of power. This thing is 5.3 million billion watts of power. So it's incredibly brief, though. The blast itself lasts less than 1/trillionth of a second. But this year, they're hoping to get and produce a 10 petawatt shot. And Ruxy Lee, the head scientist of this project, is already planning on building a laser that'll pack a mind-boggling 100 petawatts. It's unbelievable. It's going to be called the Station of Extreme Light. The team hopes that the laser will be able to tear a hole in the fabric of space, a phenomenon known as breaking the vacuum. It's crazy. The sci-fi sounding process would involve using a highly concentrated beam of light to tear electrons and antimatter positrons from space to prove Albert Einstein's famous E=mc2 theory. Lee explained that basically this is the significance. Says it would mean that you could generate something from nothing. Isn't that interesting? Because one of the debates with the Big Bang and everything else is, how do you create something from nothing? So just interesting there. Says the incredibly powerful laser could be used to make particle acceleration far cheaper and easier to do, making the Large Hadron Collider at CERN obsolete. So that's pretty a pretty impressive thing. They've also got similar projects going on in Russia. So it looks like a lot of countries and a lot of scientific bodies are already really embarking down this road of lasers. Who knew? That's all I'm going to say. 100 petawatts of power, Kev? Oh, wow.
That makes my lightsaber look pretty tame, Joe. It really does.
It's
But
like
you know,
a
you're
sparkler.
You mentioned CERN there, and just the other night we were talking about a study coming out of CERN, and this is called the Future Circular Collider Study. Now, they're talking about realistically having to build a new ring in Geneva close to the site of the current LHC, but they're talking about 80 to 100 kilometers in diameter.
Yeah.
Now, what you're talking about there, I mean, that seems far more feasible than going and building these absolutely massive ring-based things, right?
On a tabletop. On a tabletop. Now, imagine, if you will, if you put something like that in space or whatever, what that could do, like a burst like that. I mean, unbelievable. I was just blown away at that type of power. And to be able to tear through space, I have to think that's got to be. See, that's where I start to really, really get concerned, because it seems like science has no pause button. It's always push, push, push the envelope, which, of course, you kind of have to do if you're going to advance. There's always these times where you're presented with these decision points where, you know, you go down this road and there could be some serious scientific achievement, but at, you know, great cost or risk. The problem that I have with this kind of stuff is that we don't get a say in it, because this is our environment we're talking about. And if something goes south, shouldn't we have a say in the risk? And because this is our life too. If they want to like destroy the planet or something like that, I think we should put it up for a vote. That's all I'm saying. What do you guys think?
No, exactly. If you're going to be doing something, if you're going to be doing something that risky, I would think that you would kind of let the population of the Earth decide if it's worth the risk or not. But
do us a solid, do us a solid. Come on, just let's discuss this, because, and I get it, there's tyrants out there. There's people that want to do. There's people that think, well, I know what's best for you. I'm a smart guy. I went to MIT. You didn't. You're a greeter at Walmart. What do you know? You're worthless.
All I gotta say though is I don't recommend shining that laser in someone's eye.
No. Go ahead.
Look at what they've done. Look at the things that they do. Look at how they test vaccinations. They test all of these kinds of things on the human population of the world. Look at look when they did the A-bomb and all these kinds of things. Did they actually know what was going to happen? I'm sure they had some kind of theory. Well, it was just a theory of what was going to happen, but they did it anyway. These cats always do this crap all the time. They're going to test something. They're going to do something just to see what it's going to do. They don't take into consideration, I think, like we think, like, hey, well, hold up. If there is a 1% chance that this might mess the whole world up, if you're going to, any of these daggone things that they do, testing this stuff, they do not take into consideration although they don't, not into consideration. I'm sure that they do, but they don't care. They're going to try it anyway. I mean, like, They dropped the bomb. What would happen? Had it blown a hole in the ozone layer that would have had like a snowball effect that would have took the whole ozone layer out of the entire Earth? They had to have some kind of knowledge that it was a possibility. Did they care? No, they did it anyway. And any of these weapons they continue to do these things. And I think they have a theory about it, but I think at the end of the day, it's like, it's like the curious cat. They don't care. They just go on and do it anyway.
Of course. Now I will tell you this, and I got to thank Tony Patch for really taking Kev and I down this road, and it's the road of peer-reviewed work. Most often, this stuff is out there for you to view and see. The problem is they write it in such a fashion that it takes years off your lifespan actually having to read it. It literally dries you out. It's so dry that you will dehydrate yourself just reading this material. I mean, it is horrifically dry. But if you can get through it, by God, there's some good information there on the cutting edge technology that they're going through. And it's all, or most of it is out there for you to access and to read. But and more people need to do that so that you can understand some of this testing and some of this experimentation that's going on. So then you can go ahead and, warn your friends and your family and say, hey, look what they're doing. This is crazy. Because they're not going to tell you. They're just going to push the button. I tell you what. This is what I don't like. So, Kev, that's kind of that's the whole laser thing. And I just, as much as it's cool, don't get me wrong, it's one of those push the envelope things that I think we should really have a say in, that we never get a say in. So
we never get a say in anything that's going to turn out dangerous, Joe. I mean, lasers that can rip the veil. What can possibly go wrong there, dude?
Yes, of course, yeah. And that's the interesting thing, is because CERN doesn't produce this type of power, and everybody says, well, it's only one trillionth of a second. Well, what's a collision at CERN? It's not a long time, but
that's the thing that people kind of don't appreciate, Joe. I mean, that's one collision that they give the kind of calculations for.
Yeah.
But these packets of protons or ions of lead, they are one after the other. They're separated by a nanohair. So all individual explosions, I mean, that's where you really have this build-up to rip the veil.
Yeah, right. And then, of course, like I say, it doesn't matter if it's a trillionth of a second. One thing that quantum science has taught us is that once a door is open, it's open. The time factor in the quantum world doesn't exist. So once a door is open, it's open. Because there are things out there and beings that do not or are not restricted to the limitations that we are. And that's the thing. So what are we opening a door to?
We've been looking at the particle accelerators lately, Scott, and a kind of new take on it. Some of the listeners will have heard this, but I mean, when you actually look at something like CERN, what it is in reality, it's a scaled up model of the qubit within the D wave. And the D wave qubits, it's got counter rotating electrons, giving it that superposition. And what do you get? You've got the pipes at CERN with counter rotating streams of protons or electrons or ions of lead, and exactly the same thing. And we're almost looking at these particle accelerators, of which there are many now around the world, has been like, for lack of a better term, Scott, maybe almost quantum nodes on some quantum network.
Yeah.
And what they're doing to our reality around us, that's beyond me. And we're into speculation here, I know, but I can certainly follow the fact that CERN itself and places like Brookhaven and all the other ones, they act like qubits in their own way. They go quantum.
Interestingly enough, too, Scotty, Bison in the chat room said, people opening doors with Ouija boards. He's right, and I'm going to tell you why, because we too ourselves are quantum. Our brains are quantum. And so when you embark down that spiritual road, what happens is your brain is a conduit for that. You are a conduit for that. And you open a door when you do things like Ouija boards. And that door never shuts. It's always open. So that's one of those things you got to be very, very careful about going down those roads, because you never know what you're letting through. And you do. You do that.
And going back to this whole laser thing, right? I mean, they say it can pierce the veil, right? Or, you know, pierce space or whatever. Where's it going? Once it's pierced the, I mean,
you fire through a freaking
exactly. That's what I'm wondering. I mean, we're talking about multiverse theory here and stuff. So, if we're firing a laser that's tearing through the veil, is somebody on the other, in another universe sitting there, and all of a sudden you just see a laser open up through a portal and like hit their planet or
that's what I'm saying. It's like, boy, we are just some freaking ignorant beings sometimes, Come on. Why aren't we thinking about other things before we embark down this road? I'm not saying don't go there, but I'm saying at least have the discussion to say, is this the right thing? And what are who are we affecting outside of just us when we rip?
And Joe, who is making these decisions? That's the thing for the rest of the 7 to 8 billion heads on this planet. Who is making the decisions for this crap? I mean, I think we're technologically advanced enough that we should have a voting system at least for the planet, to where we can go on the internet and we can go like, okay, you want to try this? Okay, it's a yes or no thing, at least at the bare minimum here. Because who are these people that are making these decisions? People getting paid, people making money, some crazy, Frankenstein kind of scientists, people out there going like, yes, push the button, let's see what happens. I mean, really, it's insane.
Yeah, it really, truly is. So, I mean, I hope, guys, that more people get involved in the research, and seeing and reading through that horrifically dry stuff to get to those golden nuggets of information.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine we end up like pissing off a bunch of aliens on another planet in another universe because our laser like killed their leader, like hit him in the head.
Man, we just don't.
And these are the things that we know about. These are the things that we do know about that they're trying out. Imagine that the unknown unknowns, the things that we can't even fathom that these cats are out there doing. But, I guess they would be the known unknowns, because we do know that they are doing stuff. They have to be doing things that we don't know about that would tick off these lizard aliens or whatever's out there, or whatever black holes they might open up, or these kinds of things that are out there. I mean, really, we have to consider this. Because look at the things that we have found out as years and decades have gone by that we learn about that they've been doing all along. So there has to be all of these things that we do not know.
Yeah. Well, wow, we're almost to the break. That was a very great discussion.
Start to Freaky Friday, gents. This is going to be another one of those shows.
I like that energy.
We're talking about ripping the veil, and then right after this show, Chris and Chevy Geo, they will take you beyond.
Did you come up with that all by yourself? That was lovely.
You see 860 episodes in, Joe. I'm like your hat. I'm old hat now.
Golly, man. I tell you what, that was just that gave me chills, man. I'm just
tonight it's going to be really good because they're going to be talking about #Tyler. That's been talked a lot about on the internet lately. I heard somebody called Quinn Michaels getting into all of that. They're going to be talking about CERN as well, quantum computers, various AI programs. So I think it's going to be the perfect follow-on from everything that we've still got to cover here on Freaky Friday. And only one segment down, guys. So much to go, right? Yes. In your best Sean Connery voices.
What are we going to talk about now?
Scott's got something very, very good after the break, because something that always goes down a treat here on Freaky Friday is when you've got audio and strange noise type stuff. So, Scott, give us a little teaser of what we're going to be getting into after the break.
We have some terrifying sounds coming out of the Canadian forest.
Oh, I love that. Terrifying sounds.
Up in the tundra of Kanadistan.
So we shall see what this is all about.
Now all of a sudden I want to go watch South Park and Terrence and Phillip for some reason.
No, Oak Island. Eyes and Boots.
Oh yes. Hey, by the way, have you got any updates on Oak Island? I have not been able to watch that. Did they get
Oh my word, Joe.
Oh,
good.
yeah, it's off the chain.
It's getting good,
It's
Joe.
been off the chain.
Yeah, it's beyond off the chain. It's
So
brilliant.
you're saying I got to binge watch?
And there's also now a show on History called, well, it's either History or Nat Geo, called Nightfall. And this is all about the Templars. It's a dramatization, and it's the perfect kind of addendum to Oak Island. It truly is. And of course, our very own Whistler, a direct descendant from the St. Clairs. Welcome back to all you Wookiees tuned in to tonight's live broadcast of Freaky Friday, right here on your number one network, Truth Frequency Radio, www.tfrlive.com. Kev Baker, that is a very, very Joe Joseph. We've got Scott Lopez and Kenneth Webb. I'm going to come to you because the two of us, very, very firm fans of the X-Files. I mean, go figure, right? Being on the crew. But this week I was left feeling with almost a bitter taste in my mouth because I was highly disappointed. First 5 minutes, I thought, here we go. This could be one of the best episodes ever because it was obviously about to tackle the Mandela effect. However, by the end of this episode, gents, I was raging because this was like something I would expect from the BBC. I mean, this was playing silly music at times when it was talking about genuine conspiracies that are out there. And by the end of it, I mean, this just painted anyone into the Mandela effect or anyone following any of the conspiracies mentioned in the show. You're just some kind of crackpot. Ken, that's why I took this one, and it disappointed me, dude. And I'm a firm lover of the show, but what did you make of it?
Well, see, now at first when I was watching it, I was like you going into it, I was like, no way. This is what we talk about all the time. This is what we look at as far as the freaky. But, and then it started getting what I call corny. And I was like, no, come on, man. That was my reaction, my reaction to it. But towards the end, I kind of thought, through the third quarter of it, I thought it pulled back. I thought it pulled back to make you think about different effects, different types of Mandela effects. And I thought it kind of broadened it at the end. And maybe because I'm such a, I'm like you, I'm a longtime fan of the X-Files and everything, that when I was watching it, maybe I made up an excuse for it. But, I really looked at it, it's broadening it to make you think about it was like three different effects. It was the Mandela effect, and the one guy was like, no, it's not the Mandela effect, it's this other guy's effect. And then of course, you got Mulder at the, towards the end of it where he's sitting there talking about, it's all in your mind, blah, 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 blah. That's the disappointment in it. But I think overall, I mean, if you do an analytical a critique of the episode, it broadened it out to make you think about these other effects, these other time periods that people would think about things like I don't remember the other two other side of Mandela, but they were talking about like in the 1970s. The one guy was talking about another effect during this time that was dubbed by this guy's name and everything. And it made me actually broaden my thinking of the whole Mandela effect to think about, like, has this been going on for that long? Has it been going along and dubbed during these time periods? It made me want to research, and I'll be honest, I haven't researched it, but there's something, I got a little tab, a little bookmark to, one day that I will look back to think about these things that, and it's like Freaky Friday, we're theorizing, we're thinking, it's the same thing on that. So with the corny alien dude sitting there, doing all of these little flashbacks and all these kinds of things, I was kind of disappointed disappointed. But at the same time, I was like, now this is X-File fashion right here. At the end of the day, it wasn't totally a diminishment of X-Files and making, everybody look like a crackpot, because, I mean, Scully, she was always the one that tried to make everybody look like a crackpot that ever thought, no matter what she saw, in the X-Files and all these kinds of things. But it was Mulder this time, as he has done a few times through the different episodes that make you think these kinds of things. But I think it broadens the spectrums, and I was I have to disagree, Kevin, with you, and I don't disagree that many times with you on this. I think that this one was something that you have to look outside the box on, and I think it broadens your perspective, because it made me want to look deeper into a Mandela effect and look at these other characters that they were talking about to see if there was any validity in the scripting of this, to see like, yeah, has this thing been going on, and was there other names for it? How long has this been going on?
And you make a great point, and I think it was the Mengele effect was one of them, one of the terms they came up with, and that's exactly what I thought. I was starting to think, I always thought the Mandela effect, it's nothing new, but it's been about for a few years. But I'd never considered that this might have been experienced in the past and given a different name, and definitely something to look into there. But yeah, the X-Files, folks, definitely it's a must-watch if you're into Freaky Friday. And things are about to get really freaky right now because, like we were saying before the break, some of the best radio we do, it involves playing audio clips. And from time to time, we come across ones that just make your hair stand on end. Scott Lopez, his mum, sent him some audio, and this is going to literally blow your mind. And Scott, talk about apt material for a Freaky Friday. Talk to us about this before you play it, because we listened during the break, and I mean, this is some freaky stuff, man.
Yeah, definitely. Yesterday my mom was like, hey, you need to check this out. I don't know where she found it from or whatever, but she was like, somebody caught some really weird audio out in the woods in Canada. And I was sitting there thinking, oh, okay, because we know how a lot of these things go, a lot of these clips is like sound or something kind of dubbed over or whatever. But when I got a chance to actually sit and listen to it, I was like, whoa, this is really, really crazy. And this was recorded, I believe, about a month ago. It says it was, at least it was uploaded on December 21st. And this is out of Morristown, British Columbia. And nobody can explain really the sounds that are coming out here, but they are very, let's just say, pretty unnerving. I know that if I was there recording that and I was hearing that, I would probably be feeling extremely unnerved by it. So I'm going to play this, and we can kind of get into it and see if we can break down what it could possibly be.
What that is? I don't know. It's scary. Everyone else is hearing it too.
There we go. I can play it again if you want to hear it one more time.
Where was this at? Where was this recorded at, Scotty?
It says Morristown, British Columbia in Canada.
Let's hear that one more time, because that is, I mean, that's chilling. It really is.
Yeah, and when you hear the video go silent, that's because they're blocking out the guy cussing, because obviously I'd probably be cussing too if I heard something like that freaking me out. But here, I'm going to play it one more time.
That is. I don't know. Scary. Everyone else is hearing it too.
There we go.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And and people in the chat room like a wolf and all this, but I've heard plenty of wolves and everything in the night. That sounds some humanistic. It's got too many humanistic traits in a holler of some sort, but it doesn't sound like a wolf to me. And I don't know.
The person filming it, the person filming it, they live out here. I mean, it looks like it's from the back of someone's house. So I would assume if somebody lived in Canada most of their lives out in the woods, that they would be pretty familiar with animal sounds coming from those woods. And I'm pretty sure that they would know if it was a wolf or not. And to me, that does not sound like a wolf at all. It sounds way different. I've never heard anything like that.
You know what my mind wants it to be, Scott, right? I mean, obviously it wants it to be the Sasquatch, the Bigfoot. But, I mean, something I can tell you is, I mean, it's something I've definitely haven't heard anything identical to that before. Certainly strange, isn't it? And like you say, that's the most compelling piece, I think, if these people do live there. I mean, if it's out of the ordinary for them, they must be used to all the kind of native noises coming from that part of the world.
Yeah, wasn't there some somewhat similar audio I think you had played before, and I can't remember exactly where it was from. I want to say it was somewhere in the UK over there. Maybe even Scotland or something. I can't remember. I'll have to go back and check. But I do remember you playing some audio where the sound seemed to be somewhat similar to that. It was like this sort of this humanistic howling kind of
wailing
noise. Yeah, like a wailing sound or something. Yeah, very bizarre, very, very compelling audio, I must say. I was skeptical at first because but then when I heard it myself, I was like, whoa, that's wild.
But I remember watching a series a long time ago about what they went out and tried to get the Sasquatch. The Sasquatch hunters. They would go out. It's like a group of those cats that would go out and they would sit there and they would try to go out different locations and they go squatching or something like that. They would call it, and they would make the different noises that they had recorded from time, and it does sound a little familiar to something that they were trying to replicate or the recordings that they have. I can't exactly recall at the time, but there's a familiar sound to this, but I don't think it's definitely not a wolf that I've ever heard. And I've heard wolves and all this kind of stuff, all over the United States, but it does sound something like, I remember they would go out there and go squatching, and they would go out there and they would make the noises that sounded similar to this, but it almost sounds humanistic. It is what it sounds like to me. It definitely doesn't sound like a wolf, though. Mothman. Mothman, like Lizard Tongue says.
But I mean, isn't it interesting, guys? I mean, how our brains are frantically trying to construct something that we can deal with here from a noise that we hear. I mean, seeing things, even seeing scary things is frightening enough, right? But I find noises can be far scarier than anything you can see with your own two eyes, because your imagination gets to work then, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it does.
I mean, you're trying.
Look. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no! I was just saying, your mind is trying to correlate that sound with something familiar, right? I mean, anything that could possibly be making that noise that may, that may put out that sound. I mean, you're trying to put something together, and when you really can't, that's when you all of a sudden the fear factor kicks in, because your brain isn't registering anything in its database that it can correlate it to. So, You usually fear what you don't understand or what you can't comprehend. And, it's one of those situations where, like I said, if I was out there, I'd probably be having to change my underwear after hearing that.
Oh, yes.
Well, right, brother. I know. And you think about it. Think about all the weird sounds that are being heard worldwide that are being reported. From independent media or individuals out there. I mean, all of these different sounds, and it seems like in the last 5 to 10 years, the last decade alone. I mean, there is a exponential curve of different sounds and noises that people are recording out there that they're hearing. I mean, whether it's booms or whether it's sonic booms or like so many things that are going on out there that it's unexplainable, that nobody can explain to the populace out there, that are going on that's making people want to know what in the world is going on with all these different sounds.
Yeah, and I found that audio, and thanks to Bison in the chat for posting it, of the weird sounds that were in Scotland, and it was titled "Is There a Werewolf in Scotland?" Because nobody really knows what these sounds were. So I'm gonna play this, and I haven't had time to see if the audio is leveled on it, so I'll have to kind of do it on the fly. But here we go. Wow. So it does. It sounds very similar. I mean, the two audio clips have a very similar sound to them. I think they do.
With the Canadian one, Scott. I mean, that thing there, that sounded horrendous. At times, there was almost like a deeper toned response to it.
To me, it almost sounds like the sound a whale makes.
Very, very like that.
Very bizarre.
What do you reckon, Ken? Sasquatch, Mothman?
That's the thing, is you don't know. There's so many sounds being recorded. And that's I'll say, there's a lot of things out there that everybody's recording. There's so much information out there, so many sounds out there. And I remember the trumpets of the horns. It kind of made me think back in the day. It was like, man, is that the seven trumpets, the seven horns blasting in the heavens? I mean, because this is how we condition to think about these things. We don't know. I think at the end of the day, that's the beauty of it, is we really don't know. But through individuals having the technology that we have to be able to record, to video, we will be able to get to that conclusion of knowing what these things are at some point, because there's so many of them out there. I mean, you go on YouTube and you just type in strange sounds, and you put in and you go over it and you filter it out to the newest videos. There's so many things that people are out there right now recording strange sounds, sonic booms, all of these different things, these sounds like this. There's so many things out there, and that is the beauty of technology, as far as of 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, from what we had. These things were probably still going on, but nobody could actually be able to record them. It's like nowadays, it's like there's so much things going out there that we have to say that, yeah, man, we just don't know. But what we do know is if a scientist or somebody can't go swamp gas on us, like the general thing, oh, it's swamp gas, or it's some swamp gas sound, to us, we just don't know. And there's so much out there that we just don't know. And that's the beauty of Freaky Friday, people, because, this is where we can discuss these types of things and put them out there and go, we just don't know. Are they banshees? Are they wolves? Or is it an interdimensional creeper? Or is it this, that, something else, Sasquatch? We just don't know because we don't have the proof. And that's why we are doing what we do. We're sitting here, we're conversating about it, and we're theorizing about it because until we know, we just don't know, really. And I mean, I think at the end of the day, we have to throw our hands up in the air and go, we just don't know. There is so many possibilities. You can't say it's this or that because we just don't know. And there's so many things going on in this world right now, from lights in the sky to the sounds that are going on that take us back to where, it's absolutely woo. Absolutely woo 100%. And I think the people out there listening to the show and us on the panel, we already do it. We have to, agree that we just don't know. But we have to be open for things that we don't know about, things we haven't thought about, things that, we haven't, that we don't know. And I mean, really, like, the Sasquatch exists, the Mothman exists, the interdimensional beings. I mean, what are these things? That keeps us, that drives us to keep searching, to keep listening, to keep our cameras going, to keep the audio going so that we can find out these truths.
Yeah, definitely. And, I mean, I saw some pretty interesting footage also yesterday of what appeared to be like energetic orb activity. And I'm, I'm very, very skeptical when it comes to video footage. Usually I'm the one that ends up having to poo-poo on everyone's videos and be like, no, that's CGI, but, the video I saw yesterday was pretty compelling, I must say. It was from Mexico, and maybe during the break I'll drop the link in the chat so people can check it out. But
well, what is very Mexico, Scott? Because I mean, even the UFOs, and like you, I seem to be the kind of the debunker now when it comes to watching these things because so many are quite obviously fakes. But I tell you something, when I was looking into them back in the day, high frequency, you would get UFO sightings and cases coming from South America, and in particular Mexico. And what was refreshing was, I mean, they would report this on the news over there. They were quite open about this. It was almost like that whole country was a hotspot, Scotty.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess it still is. I don't know what it is about Mexico, well, and South America in general, right? I mean, because look at all the UFO sightings you get coming out of like Peru and all that. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe is it maybe even, are we dealing with something like maybe more spiritual, right? I mean, because the UFO is just something that's unidentified and it's a flying object. Are we looking at spiritual energies? I know a lot of people in Mexico and South America are more, I say, religious, and they're more superstitious. So maybe they're more kind of in tune with that spiritual side. Maybe these things manifest more over there. I mean, I don't know. This is just kind of my idea, but maybe we're not even looking at, in some of these cases, maybe we're not even looking at something that's like alien. Maybe we're looking at more of a spiritual manifestation. The video I saw, the first thing that popped in my head is maybe we're looking at like an orb, because it wasn't like a giant UFO of a massive size. What they were filming was something small, probably about the size of a tennis ball or something like that, just kind of floating around, and it was morphing in shape. And, I could tell there was no CGI to it because of the way the video was filmed. It was an interlaced video, and the object was also interlaced into the video. So there was no way it was like inserted in afterwards. You could tell it was part of the original video. So I don't know. It was really weird, and I don't know. it's just those things, man, where, Mexico always seems to have a lot of these crazy sightings, and a lot, South America does too. And I just don't know what it is with that area.
That's the thing, Scotty. That's the thing, Scotty. That's the thing that everybody out there listening to this broadcast right now has to recognize right now. And I did a video years and years ago about this. And, to make it simplistic, I plucked a bottle cap across the screen. And I said, do you know what that is? And you look at the video, most people, I knew what it was. So it wasn't an unidentified flying object to me because I could identify it because I knew what it was. But it flew across the screen. Now, to other people who didn't recognize that this was a bottle cap flying across the screen, it was a UFO. This is where we have to go, is in the definition itself. If it's something flying in the sky and you don't know what it is a UFO. Is it alien? Is it extraterrestrial? I mean, we really have to get our terminology down. I mean, we really do. I mean, if we really want to know the truth, terminology is key. It absolutely is. I mean, if you look in the sky, there's something out there and you don't know what it is, then it is a UFO to you flying across the sky. If it's flying, then it is a UFO. It's unidentified to you unless you know exactly what it is. And that could be anything. I mean, that if you at least accept the terminology of that, then you can broaden your perspective of the entire thing to think, oh, is this a government experiment? Is this some kind of living being living in different atmosphere levels of our planet? Is it extraterrestrial? I mean, you can go from there, but what we do is people say UFOs don't exist. And this is what kills me about these kinds of things, is when people say, oh, that's just some tinfoil hat UFO. And I'm like, no, I can make something that goes across the sky and you will not know what it is. Therefore, it is a UFO. So therefore, UFOs do exist. We have to get it. But anyway.
Welcome back. Hour number 2 on this week's Freaky Friday, right here on Truth Frequency Radio, www.tfrlive.com. I'm trying not to laugh because Astriana has entered the Photoshop wars over in the chat room, guys. She has just posted a pic. I will send it in there. Yes, it's shaming yours truly here, but Scott Lopez, I thought our Photoshoppery was of a high standard.
Oh,
that
my.
Friend is right up there.
Now that is some high-class Photoshoppery there.
We like that, don't we? We definitely like that.
Astriana. All right. You okay. Gonna have to step up my game here.
Well, maybe that creature that I'm on there is responsible for the noise that was heard in Canada, Scott. And you're going to play that one more time. I don't know if Joe heard it, but there's a few listeners in the chat room. They missed it. And this is a creepy noise that we've been trying to kind of work out what is behind it. Go for it, Scott.
What that is? I don't know. Scary.
Wow.
Everyone else is hearing it too.
Yeah, so
That's not a freaking wolf, dude.
No way, it's a wolf. Yeah, no,
that's got some serious. Wow. Yeah, that's bizarre, for sure. That's certainly not, I would say, wildlife. I would, unless it's like a bunch of mooses issuing their mating calls. Maybe that's it. Like
because the video is recorded by somebody who lives, because I think you were away when I first played it. This was in Morristown, British Columbia, in Canada,
they are familiar with the territory, is what you're saying.
Yeah. You could tell they're basically filming out of their backyard,
Yeah.
and the dude is like freaking out because he's never heard anything like it before.
Yeah, so that's pretty good, dude.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird one. It's definitely out of place.
Wow. Unbelievable. So, what else do we have on the docket there?
It's okay because Scott now has the perfect kind of follow on from that, don't you, Scott?
I knew he would.
Well, since we've been speculating about these sounds, and I know that Kev is quite partial to it being a Sasquatch.
Open to it being a Sasquatch. Not partial, but open to it. Come on.
Come on. You know you want it to be the Wookiee out there.
Of course I want it to be. We all know that. Okay, I'll admit it. I want it to be the Sasquatch. Come on, man.
Yeah.
So I pulled up an article here.
Yes.
From the awesome website mysteriousuniverse.org. Bizarre and frightening accounts of Bigfoot attacks. So
they've gone on the offensive?
Yes.
There's like a guerrilla war or a Sasquatch war. How could it be a guerrilla war if they're Sasquatch? Ooh, this is getting much more complicated than I ever thought Sasquatch could.
Dear Lord.
Are they riding Nessie as they're doing this? You know, is it like Sasquatch on Nessie? Yahoo!
They're riding those.
Don't let him derail you, Scott. Do not let him derail you.
Oh, don't! Hey, man! So seriously, I've never has anybody heard of a Sasquatch attack before? Because I haven't.
Well, we're about to, so let's get into it here.
Wow.
It says one of the most well-known and widely discussed cryptids of all time are the mysterious hairy ape-like giants of North America, which are variously called the Bigfoot, Sasquatch, skunk ape, grassman, and other regional names seen all over the continent. They may differ in appearance or behavior, but one thing that is usually consistent is that for all of their size and strength, they seem to be mostly peaceful and benevolent denizens of the forest, much more likely to run away or hide than to confront. Yet there have been many accounts from at least the 19th century all the way up to the present of a different side to these creatures, that of a fierce, ferocious beast fully willing and able to attack or even kill if it has to. Although not as common as reports of the more benign or gentle Bigfoot, these accounts the accounts or violent or aggressive Bigfoot attacks are rather scary and shocking, and show that there is perhaps more to these enigmatic creatures than meets the eye. Perhaps the most widely known and publicized case of an attack on humans from an alleged Bigfoot occurred in the summer of 1924, when 5 prospectors by the names of Marion Smith and his son Roy Smith, Fred Beck, Dave Lefevre, and John Peterson were out in the wilds of Mount St. Helens in Sacramento County, Washington. The group was out in the remote wilderness working on a claim in the area of a branch of the Lewis River about 8 miles from Spirit Lake when they came across their first of many oddities to come. There, embedded into the earth, was a series of footprints reported as looking very human-like, but much more massive, at around 14 inches in length and with unusually stubby toes. Not long after this, the men began to see some strange creature looking through the trees during their trek, with a hulking, 7-foot-tall gorilla-like figure seen on at least 4 occasions, which was described as being covered in long black hair, sporting 4-inch long ears that stuck straight up, which is an odd detail to say the least. At one point, one of the spooked prospectors, Marion Smith, fired at it to send it lumbering off, but far from cowering it, this seemed to only make the creature even bolder. On the morning of July 10, Beck purportedly sighted the creature standing some distance away near the edge of a canyon and decided to try to take a shot at it. He apparently managed to score a direct hit, and the bizarre figure apparently staggered and fell right over the ledge uh, of the canyon, plummeting 400 feet down, presumably to its death. It was perhaps this incident that would be the catalyst for what came next. Later that evening, the men were relaxing at their camp in the cabin they had built when they were startled by a sudden urgent pounding on the roof that seemed to shake the whole structure. The prospectors were immediately on the alert and grabbed their rifles, still wondering what was going on. In addition to this pounding and thudding, the cabin began to be pelted by large rocks, some of which broke off pieces of the building or came careening straight through the windows and roof, and at least one of which struck Beck to purportedly knock him unconscious. According to news stories at the time, there were dozens of the creatures prowling about outside of the cabin, and Beck would later claim that the men had fired wildly out into the night in all directions and even up through the roof in a panicked, desperate attempt to drive the menacing creatures off. According to him, the fight lasted all night as they cowered in their cabin, shooting at the monstrous hairy intruders that were assaulting them from out in the night, which they called mountain devils. And it was not until the coming of morning that they were finally able to escape, leaving their cabin, equipment, and potentially very valuable claim behind. As soon as the story was out, the area came to be widely known as Ape Canyon, and natives of the area suggested that the men had come across a tribe of 7 to 8 foot tall hairy wild men with supernatural powers who they called the Siatik. According to these tribal sources, members of this lost tribe were typically shy and hardly ever seen, but would exact great vengeance on anyone who killed one of their own. Not only is this one of the earliest reports of Bigfoot violence, but it is the report that really got people interested in the phenomenon of the massive hairy ape men of North America, and the report really got people's imaginations going at the time. It says, the story of the Ape Canyon Bigfoot attack has become a major part of the Bigfoot lore ever since, but as dramatic and as exciting as it is, there are some inconsistencies to be found in later reports and retellings. For instance, in the original report of the attack, it was stated that the creature that had been shot off the cliff had been killed the day before the attack, yet Beck would in later years, insist it had been killed in the morning after the attack. The size of the footprints they had found also went up from an already impressive 14 inches all the way to a staggering 19 inches in length, and Beck would claim that the original creature that had been shot at had been hit in the head 3 times by Smith, yet had been totally unfazed. The attack itself later also underwent an evolution from a brief shootout to a prolonged all-night siege and attack with the creatures trying to smash their way. It even reached in through holes in the walls and tried to grab the terrified men within. It says, in short, the story has gotten more and more exciting and action-packed over the years, and while this may just be down to Beck's ailing memory in later years, it still smacks of trying to sensationalize and spice up the story, and makes any truth that much harder to glean from it. Interestingly, one of the people who interviewed Beck about his experiences in later years was none other than Roger Patterson, the man who managed to film the most famous piece of Bigfoot footage of all time in October of 1967, and who published the interview in a 1966 book called Do Abominable Snowmen of America Really Exist? Indeed, it is said that the whole over-the-top account given by Beck was one of the reasons Patterson and his partner Bob Gimlin have developed so much interest in the creatures to begin with, and why they had ended up out there at Bluff Creek looking for Bigfoot. The Ape Canyon story will likely remain cloaked in mystery, and we will probably never know just how much of what was reported actually happened and how much is fiction. There is, unfortunately, not much evidence to go on other than Beck's account, and even the location of the attack, the cabin. The cabin was supposedly destroyed in a fire in 1968, according to Beck, and by other accounts, wiped out in the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. The exact location of the mysterious cabin continues to be searched for to this day, with some even claiming to have found it. The body of the creature that Beck allegedly shot to send sprawling to its doom on the rocks below was also never recovered, if it ever existed at all. Due to this lack of evidence in any way to corroborate the events depicted, it seems we are left to merely speculate and discuss the far-out tale of Ape Canyon. So there's that one. That's pretty interesting. I've actually never heard of the Ape Canyon story. Have you guys heard of that one?
Never. Wow, that's brilliant, though. What a freaking...
What was that back in the 70s, Scott?
20s.
Because
that was back in the 20s.
24 or something, right?
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Could you imagine, like, Sasquatch Fight Club going down? Right? I mean, right there? Like you guys said, that's unbelievable. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild.
So what do you think? Interdimensional?
Of course.
Yeah?
I think so.
Because how else do you pull it off?
Yeah, it'd have to be something like that, Joe. It would have to be something like that. I mean, how in this day and age, in 2018, we don't have bodies, we don't have any of these kinds of things going on to where there's the definitive proof about a lot of these things. And you know, I kind of chalk it up to like what in the last year they found some deep sea kind of being that kind of reminds you of Nessie a little bit. Yeah. That they had found some deep sea creature that was like prehistoric, that, you know, only comes up and eats so many times. You know, that's the only way they got them was to find them. You know, and it's the first time that they found them and had definitive proof that these things exist. You know, and I mean, there's so much that we don't know. But with a Sasquatch, I think there's too many daggone sightings over the years and everything that there's not something to this. Whether it's some kind of being that's out there. But I mean, if it was like a regular being that's out there without some interdimensional kind of thing going on with it, it's like, how would we would not have proof of a body, a skeleton, a burial site, or, you know, somebody shot them, somebody captured them, or something like that, unless there was something, you know. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not. Absolutely, I'm not saying there's anything, you know, that's not those kinds of things, but it's like the only thing that could come into play that I know of personally with interdimensional, something that goes back and forth, or unless it's ability, you know, like each thing out there in nature has these different abilities, you know, like got bats that got the sonar, they got all these things. Maybe this thing is staying off the grid, being able to keep out of the realm of humans, and I mean that they have abilities that we don't understand quite yet. Evidently, we don't, if they do exist, you know. So, I mean, I absolutely think interdimensional is absolutely in the cards. In the Fight Club, the first rule of Fight Club, especially the Bigfoot Fight Club, is don't talk about the Bigfoot Fight Club. They might come to your house like the Mothman. You got to look out for that guy.
Oh man!
I mean, and we got more here. We've barely.
Well, by all means, regale me, because I am already. This is unbelievable. Go ahead. Wow.
Okay, this is in a bizarre twist that may or may not have anything to do with Beck's story. In May of 1950, a mountaineer and skier by the name of Jim Carter suddenly and mysteriously disappeared in Ape Canyon while out on a climbing expedition with 20 other people on a warm, clear day. A subsequent search would turn up footprints that seemed to suggest that the missing man had been frantically running as if being chased, even careening down steep embankments and hurtling recklessly across crevasses. One searcher, a mountaineer and member of the Seattle Mountain Search and Rescue Unit, Bob Lee, had said that there was the constant sense of being watched from the woods during the search. He would say of the expedition, "It was the most eerie experience I have ever had. There was something strange on the high slopes of the mountain. I could feel the hair on my back standing up. It was eerie. I was unarmed except for my ice axe, and believe me, I never let go of that." Carter's complete disappearance is an unsolved mystery to this day. Dr. Otto Trott, Lee Stark, and I finally came to the conclusion that the mountain devils had got him. After a 2-week search by nearly 100 rescuers, no signs of Carter other than that strange evidence of his mad dash down the mountain were ever found. Lee would go on to say that he was dead serious when he said that the mountain devils got him, and claimed that there had been 25 reports of being harassed or attacked by ape-like creatures at Mount St. Helens over a period of 20 years, including a pack of visiting Boy Scouts from Centralia, along with a Scoutmaster Pease, who were unharmed but supposedly scared out of their wits after being charged by one of the furious beasts. It seems that whatever they are, the ape men of Ape Canyon do not appreciate human trespassers. The original Beck account from Ape Canyon may be one of the older stories of aggressive Bigfoot, but there are actually even older accounts as well. In February of 1829, there were reports in several newspapers, such as the February 9 edition of the Statesman and the Connecticut Sentinel, of an apparent attack by a hairy giant in the Okefenokee Swamp of the U.S. State of Georgia. 2 men had apparently ventured out into the swamp to explore, bringing along with them a young boy. At some point, they found strange prints measuring 18 inches long and 9 inches wide out in the deeper part of the swamp, and they made their way back home after being spooked by one of the enormous footprints. Some local hunters then became interested in the tale, and one of the men who had seen the footprints accompanied them out to the site where he had found them. They did indeed find some vestiges of the tracks and apparently followed them deeper into the wilderness for several days. One evening, as the group was encamped, they reportedly had a harrowing experience indeed when some fierce creature charged them from the brush. 5 men and the creature itself would end up dead in the ensuing battle. And the Statesman News report says of this, the next minute he was full in their view, advancing upon them with a terrible look and ferocious mien. Our little band instinctively gathered close in a body and presented their rifles. The huge being, nothing daunted, bounded upon his victims, and in the same instant received the contents of 7 rifles. He did not fall alone, nor until he had glutted his wrath with the death of 5 of them, which he effected by wringing the head from the body. Writhing and exhausted, at length he fell with his hapless prey beneath his grasp. When the dead beast's carcass was examined, it was found to measure 13 feet tall and was covered with coarse hair. And the frightened men decided to retreat, as they were afraid its death would attract any others in the area. So hasty was their escape that both the mysterious monster and their fallen partners were left where they lay. Whether this incident really happened or not, the Okefenokee Swamp has long produced stories of such creatures from the native tribes and sightings, reports of Bigfoot-like beasts all the way up to the present day. Yeah, wow. So apparently it killed 5 men before it fell dead.
This is the side of the Sasquatch that they don't really write in the brochure, isn't it, guys?
I've never heard this side of Sasquatch, but I kind of maybe understand it. I don't know, man. I mean, could they be a product of the fact that, you know, our experimentation led to pissing off another race or beings? You know, I don't know, man. Gosh, whatever it is, I guess they're pissed off.
To me, it sounds like it sounds like once they're attacked, you know, they won't attack unless they're attacked, right? So that seems to be the underlying theme of all of these, the common thread of all of these stories is that once you kill one of them, then you're going to feel the wrath of whatever. Yeah, it's game on. But you know, they don't seem to be the ones on the offensive unless you attack them. I'm going on here. It says another early report was uncovered by cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman. The report comes from an article called Terror in the Woods, which appeared in the November 27, 1895 edition of the San Francisco newspaper, The Call, and is a rather dramatic, violent account of several lumbermen who either went missing or were killed in a shockingly brutal manner by some wild beast in Northern California. The story goes that in November of 1895, a lumberman came out of the wilderness telling stories of missing men and a hairy wild man running amok. The article reads, a lumberman who returned today from the forest in the north of the state brings the most harrowing intelligence of the doings of a wild man in the lumber region of the West Branch. He states that great consternation has been caused, and a large number of lumbermen have left the camps and returned to their cities rather than face the monster. For over 2 months, quite a number of men have disappeared from the camps, and when found, bore the semblance of having an encounter with some wild animal, their bodies in every instance having been terribly mangled and torn. A lumberman who returned to a camp a little north of the city a week ago startled all by stating that while at work he had been attacked by this wild man, and it was only by the help of his axe that he had been able to defend himself from the murderous attacks. Since that time, he has been seen by the crews several times, but on their approach, he fled deep into the woods with the speed of a deer. He is described as being so nearly like an animal that it is almost impossible to detect him from one. He has a long, shaggy beard and is covered with a huge skin coat. The general belief is that he is a sportsman who has become lost deep in the forest and after wandering around for weeks has gone hopelessly crazy. And there already have been over half a dozen instances of a similar character in the state. It says, what is going on here? So I don't know. Are we just talking about a crazy guy in the woods, wearing animal skins, or is it something something different?
It's Ted Nugent from back in the 70s when he wore a loincloth. We just didn't know.
The Motor City Madman.
We didn't know he had this side to him. I don't know. I would say that based on what I'm hearing, they seem to be like a defensive type of whatever it is. I think you're right that they don't attack unless they are attacked. And
when you get back to break, I will bring up one more case, and it is a more modern case. So
okay, but wow, I mean, this is a side of Sasquatch I've never really heard before. Yeah, I've heard of like sightings and things like that. Very minimal human interaction, but this is. Yes, welcome back to Freaky Friday. We're at the midway point of the broadcast. Joe Joseph here, along with Kev Baker, Scotty Lopez, Kenneth Webb, and the spirit, the essence of Johnny Whistles with us tonight. And a special shout out to Johnny. Hope you get better, buddy. Keep fighting. And so we're talking about Sasquatch Fight Club. And we're going to get into something else now, too. Scotty, you were just talking about an incident. Well, you've talked in the past about shadow people. And so you just had something happen recently at why don't you tell people what's going on?
Yeah,
the update.
Yeah. Breaking news.
From, yes.
Just before we went to break, my mom sent me a picture, and I was like, "What's that?" But then I got the follow-up message, and I was like, "Oh, wow." Apparently, so I've talked about this on Freaky Friday before.
Yeah.
And my brother, he's had a lot of experiences with seeing shadow people. He seems to have a lot of weird kind of paranormal experiences. And the picture she sent me is honestly kind of a little bit disturbing. um, he just woke up from his nap and he has these scratches on his leg that he don't know how he got them. And this actually isn't the first time it has happened, she told me. So I don't know.
Well,
I posted the picture there for you guys to see in Skype, but I will post the picture in chat. Um,
that's amazing.
I-
So similar incidents have happened all over the world. I mean, this is something that I think is more common than a lot of people really understand. These it's almost like sleep paralysis. Sometimes people feel as if like you're laying in bed and next thing you know you feel like you're being choked. That's happened to my wife where she feels like she's being pinned down and choked, and there's nothing.
yeah, my brother experiences that same thing, that sleep paralysis sort of phenomenon where it's really really weird. And so I mean, I don't know. And for him to say this stuff, I take a lot of his I put a lot of validity to his accounts because he's I would say he's a very logical thinking sort of he's a very skeptical person who usually doesn't dabble into the woo, let's say, right?
Right.
And so for him
he has really no reason to make it up, I guess you're saying, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Drone Free Zone in the chat asked if it was a cat scratch. No, his cat has been in my room all day and was literally sleeping right next to me the entire time I've been on air, and he just woke up from his nap. So there's no way anything could have scratched him, like a cat or anything like that. So, don't know. Just one weird another weird incident here.
Now, there is a another possible answer to this that I think is very valid, is the incubus or the succubus type of creature or entity. They are known for this kind of behavior. Now, according to medieval folklore, a succubus is a demon that takes the form of a woman in order to have intercourse with the man in his dreams. The name comes from an old Latin term, and it means to lie under. In Islamic superstition, there is a similar demon called the Karana or Karina, and in ancient Middle Eastern cultures, Lilith was the night demon's name. Now, whichever name is used, the essential qualities are the same. A demon who tempts men sexually at night and who tries to kill infants at birth. There are two biblical passages that refer directly to this kind of demon. One of the Dead Sea Scrolls depicts a being called the seductress, who had horns and wings and a multitude of sins in her wings. The being tempts men into sin and ultimately drags them into the pit. The passage is quite clear and similar to Proverbs, which describes the dangers of the seductress or strange woman. In describing the results of God's judgment on Edom, even in Isaiah, it says, the screech owl also shall rest there and find for herself a place of rest. The American Standard Version translates Lilith as night demon or monster, and the Revised Standard Version uses the name Lilith. Some commentators have proposed that the primitive cultures heard the cries of nocturnal animals and attributed them to demons because they had no knowledge of those animals. So the question is, are succubus real? Well, if we grant any credence to the widespread belief of ancient cultures, the answer would have to be yes. If we confine our search to biblical writing, the answer can become more difficult. But to be sure, the name has been associated with a demonic presence for several thousand years and fits in that context also in the Bible. It's also certain that, in biblical terms, This deals with the deal with demons and stuff like that. Very real, very powerful beings. Now, the succubus, of course, deals with the men. Incubus deal with females. And they all really do the same thing, you know? And in this case, you know, like I said, they violate you in your sleep. And oftentimes come in the form, you know, like where you're paralyzed, you feel yourself being violated. And there's nothing you can do about it, really. I mean, you can, you know, but most people don't know how to deal with that. And in the heat of the moment, guys, I mean, here you are being choked by an invisible force or whatever, you know. You're probably not thinking clearly as you're sleeping, by the way. So this is something that you wake up to, you know. That's hard to process. Now, that's never happened to me, but I can't even imagine being in a position like that. What do you guys think?
It's crazy. And I know that like people who experience these things, they seem to feel drained all the time and seem to feel really tired. And my brother experiences that too, where, you know, he feels drained all the time. So yeah, it almost seems like something is kind of like sucking the energy from him or something like that. I don't know. It's crazy, man. You know, I don't know. He's been experiencing this for quite a while, probably around 10 years, something like that. I would say close to 10 years. Ever since, you know, we've moved out into this, you know, had this house built and we moved into it. But it really picked up after he actually contracted meningitis after getting the meningitis shot. So go figure, right? And that seems to have really triggered a lot of this was after he had meningitis.
Wow. Isn't it amazing just what these in life, what these triggers are that open doors or perhaps
well, yeah, because, you know, meningitis causes the brain to swell, right? So
what did it do?
So did it open something up? Did it unlock something, you know?
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. That's the thing I've been wondering the whole time is was something after he had his meningitis, did he all of a sudden like gain this ability to be more open towards you know, that other side or something? Really weird, man.
That's a very good question, because again, and Kev, I mean, weigh in on this. Our brains are quantum computers, for lack of a better term. They're quantum devices, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely, Joe. I mean, the finest quantum computer in the world.
Right. So if that's the case, and, you know, something like that happens where you have a case of meningitis and your brain swells and it changes the, you know, whatever, the shape, the chemistry, the construct of it, you got to think, wow, that could have opened a door or maybe, like you said, turned it on, or some sort of capability there that exists now that didn't exist before. Almost like, you know, like when a person goes blind after, you know, having sight for so long, they say that, you know, your other senses are enhanced and the brain actually adapts itself, even to the point where people who are blind can basically almost kind of see, but see with their third eye, if you will, the one that, not your eyes, but your mind's eye, if you will.
Yeah.
And so that, I mean, is incredibly interesting to me. So I got to tell you, Scotty, I mean, that's phenomenal. I often envy people that have that capability, but at the same time, I'm very cautious about that envy, because I know it comes oftentimes at a cost, you know, and that's the thing, is that while it's interesting to hear these stories, to actually live with that is something totally different, you know. So that's pretty interesting, Kev. I mean, I'm blown away by it.
No, I mean, it's like we only see a very, very small part of the light spectrum. So I imagine if anything is altered in the brain at all, maybe we are. Maybe we are changing the way that we view the world. Maybe we're picking up on things that are even always there. That's a bit of a disturbing thought. You know, maybe we've all got one of these things around us, but only some of us pick up on it. But going back to the incubus and succubus, I mean, this is something close to home for me because even my mum, she came on the show one night and she shared her experience. And it's so typical. Looking at the chat room, somebody said they felt paralyzed. And that's exactly how she felt. But it's staggering how many different reports around the world of just this kind of thing happening.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Scott's brother, just the latest amongst millions, right?
Well, I would think so. And I would, you know, what happens when those situations occur? People don't often speak about that because they feel kind of like, well, I don't want to be viewed as a, you know, psycho or something like that. Like I got like I have screws loose, so I'm just going to keep this to myself. You know, and I don't, not to mention the fact that most people don't like to talk about that, you know, just in general. I've found that it's very hard to engage the vast majority of people when it comes to those type of situations, just because, I don't know, a lot of people just aren't plugged in like that. So I'll bet you that these events are sorely underreported. And I'll bet you this is much more common than actually is being said.
Yeah, you know, you have people that like go to the doctor because of sleep paralysis, and they just give them some general, you know, explanation, a medical explanation or whatever. Oh, you know, it's just, you know, you have sleep paralysis and blah, 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 blah. But then they don't take into account, like, what else is going on in your life, you know, besides the sleep paralysis.
Yeah, because
they feel tired all the time.
Yeah, they just
treat the symptoms. And they don't really talk about, you know, like what else is going on. I mean, I'm sure maybe the person who's suffering from sleep paralysis, you know, maybe they're seeing shadow people, right?
Yeah.
But they're not going to tell the doctor that, you know. So they're only narrowing in on one. Yeah,
I mean,
and then
go to the doctor. Think about this. Seriously, you just brought up a great point, because you go to these doctors now these days. If you say something like that, the next thing they're going to ask is, "Do you have any guns in the house?" You know,
right? Yeah, exactly.
Bam.
And
So
next thing you know, you're going to be on a you're going to be on a cocktail of they're going to put you on a cocktail of pharmaceuticals and send you home, and you know, probably want to send you to a psychiatrist or something.
You're going to the tune bin, dude.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kev.
No, it's like pilots as well when they see strange things in the sky. Many of them actually report it because 9 times out of 10 they lose their job, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and then just like in the chat room they said then they put you on drugs. Yeah. I know that it's crazy. So people just keep it to themselves. I think, like I said, I think it happens much more often than has been stated. And I think it's picking up in intensity. I say that because in my journey of you know, doing this stuff for years now, I've also felt it. And the people around me that do this same thing have also felt it. And I've seen them experience it, even like with you, Kev. I don't need to be there over in Scotland to know that there's been some significant changes to you as you've increased your knowledge. And it's just, it's amazing and humbling to see. And it's also, you pay a big price for it too. We all have.
Oh, a very big price, Joe.
Yeah.
Very big price. And I think we look around and everyone's going through it right now, aren't they? You can really see it.
Those that choose to operate within the confines of the construct of the Matrix have been benefiting from that in most cases, at least within my observation, if you will. But those that choose to operate outside the confines of the construct or the matrix are outcasts in that realm and are attacked because we're almost seen like a virus. You know, think of it as the operating system, if you will. We venture into that territory. And when we do that, we're seen as a virus. And it attacks us. We're like, like beacons of light. Boop, they see us and they converge on us. And it's been crazy. I can tell you that, like I said, I've noticed many of the people that I work with in our close circle, we're all just getting beat up spiritually, physically, mentally, just beat up. Boom, boom, boom. And as we increase our ability, our influence, and our knowledge, we just become bigger targets, and it just becomes harder and harder and harder. And how do you explain that to somebody? You know what I mean? How do you tell people that? They'll think you're, crazy.
I don't know, but that's a brilliant way of thinking about it, Joe. The fact that we are like a virus to this operating system that's been running forever now. And, we are attacked, and you can look at the trolls and all the online agents. They're like the immune system, right?
Yeah.
They're there to attack you. They swarm you to the point where...
Yeah, it's like the Matrix's antivirus kicking in, trying to delete us.
Exactly. That's what it is. Because even though we're here, we're physically here, we don't understand that the things that we do are having that effect outside that. Because like I said, we are fighting that on that side too. Because, it's like most religious texts will tell you that the fight isn't against flesh and blood. It's against principalities and powers. It's against the things you can't see. That's where the real fight lies, whether we choose to accept it or not. And so we have to understand and take the fight to where it needs to be taken. And that's what you do. And that's what we do. And that's something that's very hard to try and explain to those that choose to live within the construct, because they have no life experience outside to begin to even interpret what you're saying. So why bother trying to explain it? And again, it's underreported. It's not, we have no clear picture as to the extent of what's going on.
Joe, I have Bill Bean come on once a month now, and he used to come on maybe once every 6 months, then once every 3 months. Now it's once a month. And every time, Joe, and Bill, he doesn't hype things up. He's the most down-to-earth, honest man I know. And he is absolutely overwhelmed with the increase in all of the spiritual warfare that's manifesting more violently now, because each time he comes on, it's as if every family or person he goes to help now, these demonic entities that they absolutely possess these people, they take over their bodies, but they're becoming more and more physically violent. And it's almost as in the intensity increases, so do the actual individual cases as well.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, as we move into this future, and CERN talking about cracking open the veil to other dimensions and all of that stuff. I mean, where does this end?
Yeah, I don't know. But I can tell you, like I said, even on a personal level, I have noticed that the power that we have, when you recognize it and you start to use it, your ability to project it and amplify it has been increased, at least in my personal experience. And believe me, I am a novice at understanding this stuff. And I rely heavily on my wife because she's a spiritual lightning rod. I mean, unbelievable. I can't even begin to tell you. As a matter of fact, something happened to us just recently, just today. that just absolutely blew my mind, and it's something that I witnessed. I can't really explain it yet. I'm still trying to digest it and interpret it, but unbelievable. All I can say is what goes around comes around. And boy, does it ever. And when, you have a spouse that basically tells you 6 months ago that, hey, something, don't worry about it. The people that really did you wrong, this is what's going to happen, and this is how it's going to go down, and just wait for it. And then, boom. It's like, oh, man.
It's like living with Nostradamus, dude.
I know. It's crazy. So I can't even begin to understand it, but I am. I'm starting to understand it. I'm starting to understand what my role is in this fight for what, for lack of a better term, and why I'm in this. And it's totally what I didn't think it was, but I've accepted it. And since I've accepted it, like that was one of the things that happened. And now I'm kind of just going down that road. And how do I explain that to people? I mean, I'm sure people listening right now are like scratching their heads or saying, wow, Joe's lost it.
We're all just pawns in a very, very strange and bizarre game, Mr. Joe.
It's crazy. It's like you think you have free will. You really don't. But you do. But you don't. And it's hard. It's a hard concept to grasp. I mean, the influences that are on us 24/7 that we don't even perceive half the time because we're not looking for it, because we're not using and utilizing the capabilities that we have because you haven't been taught it, because you haven't, you haven't been able to harness it. It's unbelievable. So, yeah, I mean, that's my thoughts. I just can't believe it.
You're talking there about harnessing that kind of power. I mean, it's been shielded away from us, Joan. You can go back to the vaccines and everything else, even the food we eat. Our biological computers here, they're not even working at probably 70% at the best of times, Scott, are they?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what I was saying about like ancient man and stuff. Their minds being much more open, I would say, to what we are now. It goes back to, the dumbing down and keeping everyone in this like low vibration state, right? We have all the Wi-Fi, we have all the crap being put in our food, we have all the stuff being sprayed in our air, we have all the propaganda being put through our televisions. We're being bombarded from all angles, and our minds are basically stunted. Our growth is stunted. Our mental capacity, I would even say our spiritual capacity is stunted. We're not able to use, we're not even able to use what we're capable of, right?
Yeah.
And so, we talk about how the mind is a quantum computer.
Right.
Just think about, that quantum computer being, it's like when you overclock a processor, what's happening is our processors are underclocked. They're not even using their full potential. We're only using a very small fraction of what we're capable of doing. And, I think a lot of these ancient civilizations, a lot of, let's just use, let's say the Atlantean civilization, for example. I'm pretty sure that their pineal gland was a lot more open than our pineal glands are right now.
Oh, there we go. There's the Wookiee. That means we're back. We're live. We're moving into hour number 3 on this week's Freaky Friday, right here on Truth Frequency Radio, TFRlive.com. Now then, Mr. Lopez was on fire when it came to the topics last week. We got into the world of deep underground, military bases, alien wars, DNA, all of the good stuff. And tonight, this has been just as equally good. And now, Scott, we're going back in time again. We love talking about all this kind of ancient archaeology, the ancient mysteries. And this one is no different because you found a really interesting petroglyph that definitely is worthy of some Freaky Friday discussion.
Yes, and back on over to mysteriousuniverse.org. Ancient Indian petroglyph depicts mysterious twin suns in Earth's sky. Archaeologists in India believe they might have found the oldest known depiction of celestial objects in a curious example of ancient rock art. The etched stone was found at the Burzome archaeological site in India's Kashmir Valley. The stone was unearthed during a 1969 excavation, but has puzzled archaeologists ever since due to its enigmatic depiction of what appears to be two large objects in the sky, possibly twin suns or twin moons. Now, a new study claims that the mysterious carving may depict a particularly bright supernova which occurred around 4500 BC. Is the Burzahome carving a record of an ancient astronomical event, or is something weirder afoot here? The rock drawing appears to show two hunters closing in on a stag with the help of a dog beneath two large luminous orbs in the sky overhead. Astrophysicist Mayanek of Vahia of the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Mumbai just published the supernova theory after cross-referencing astronomical records with radiocarbon dating of various objects found at the Burzahome archaeological site. The two objects in the rock art appear to have the same brightness and appear side by side, ruling out the theory that they may depict the sun and moon. Vahia instead believes that one of the orbs could be the moon, while the other may be an extremely bright supernova, which rivaled the brightness of the moon. It goes on here. It says, in his recently published study of the stone, Bahia concludes that only one supernova remnant, HB9, meets all of these criteria, and it exploded around 4500 BC with a brightness comparable to the brightness of the moon. Bahia goes on to speculate that the two hunters in the image might not be hunters at all, but instead represent the constellations Orion and Pisces, while the animals represent Taurus and the Andromeda Galaxy. If confirmed, that theory would mean the ancient people at Burzahome possessed astronomical knowledge far more advanced than what archaeological records have previously indicated. Could this be an example of an ancient astronomical knowledge, or could this stone depict something stranger? A visit from two orb-shaped UFOs? The memories of ancient astronauts who came from a planet with twin suns? Or could these merely be some sort of decorative elements which have been misinterpreted by modern researchers? One question I keep coming back to when covering these kinds of archaeological stories is wondering just how wrong our interpretation of ancient artifacts may be. Could future civilizations accurately interpret the meanings of modern street art, the works of Salvador Dali, or the Statue of Liberty? What would they make of a dead iPhone, a Furby, or a fidget spinner? So, yeah, I mean, very interesting stuff. The carvings, very fascinating.
Yeah.
Just goes to show that what they were seeing in the sky back then was a lot different than what we see in the sky now. So,
Wow, isn't that
very fascinating stuff.
fascinating?
This is amazing. It's like riddles left for us written in the stone. But this makes me think of the Dogon, because the Dogon,
Yeah.
they had a ritual every 40 years where they were basically celebrating the fact that Sirius A and Sirius B had done another orbit. Now, it wasn't until I think it was the 1960s, Joe, right, that we appreciated that there was a Sirius B up there.
Right.
So, I mean,
So
that
how did
again,
they know?
exactly. So that again points to ancient people having a far better knowledge of the sky, at least than we ever thought they had. So it could be the same for this one here. Absolutely.
Just absolutely. I love this kind of stuff. Even like, what was it? The Sumerians.
Yeah.
That's where the Nibiru story comes into play. How they had interactions with it, and But we think we know so much, but really, do we? You know, we really know so little. The more that you learn, the more that you know that you don't know. I mean, I'm just absolutely blown away by the stuff that we've been going over tonight. You did a fantastic job, Scotty, of putting all this together because, again, I think that we oftentimes give ourselves too much credit, thinking that we know so much. We're so advanced. You know, human beings have come so far, but really, have we? You know, that's the real question. So what else you got, Scotty?
I've got more celestial goodness here.
Lovely. I love me some celestial goodness.
So here pretty soon, I believe it will be January 31st. We will be treated to a triple treat: supermoon, blue moon, and lunar eclipse, all coming to a sky near you. Sky watchers will get a rare triple treat January 31st: a supermoon, a blue moon, and a total lunar eclipse. How rare is this event? Even without the supermoon, it's the first blue moon total lunar eclipse in the U.S. since March of 1866.
By cracky, I remember that day. That was so like it was yesterday.
Exactly. Is less than a year after the Civil War ended, according to earthsky.org. A blue moon, which occurs about every 2.5 years, is another term for the second full moon in a single calendar month. January's first full moon occurred January 1st. Though the exact moment of this full moon is 8:37 a.m. Eastern, January 31st, the moon will appear plenty full for the day or two beforehand after that. However, the moon doesn't actually appear blue. As for the total lunar eclipse, it will be visible early in the morning of January 31st from Western North America across the Pacific to Eastern Asia, NASA said. In the United States, the best view of the eclipse will be along the West Coast for skywatchers. In the central and eastern U.S., only a partial eclipse will be visible since the moon will set before totality. The lunar eclipse on January 31st will be visible during moonset, said Noah Petro, a research scientist from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. Folks in the eastern United States, where the eclipse will be partial, will have to get up in the morning to see it. The eclipse will last almost 3.5 hours from the beginning of the partial phase at 3:48 a.m. Pacific time until it ends at 7:12 a.m. Pacific time, according to Sky and Telescope. Totality lasts a generous 77 minutes from 4:51 a.m. Pacific time to 6:08 a.m. Pacific time.
7 minutes. Oh, it's even a woo-filled number, dude.
I know.
three separate events with 77.
So the way I interpret the blue moon is that it just means that it's the second full moon of a month, right?
Yeah, that's what it is, man. Yeah.
Okay, so that has nothing to do with the color. Yeah, that's one thing that I know a lot of people get confused. It's not like the Smurf moon. It just means that it's the second full moon of the month. So
yeah, it says here. It says finally, a supermoon occurs when the full moon is at its closest point to the orbit of the Earth, which is also called the perigee. That makes the moon. Yeah, that makes the moon look extra close and extra bright, up to 14% bigger and 30% brighter than a full moon at its farthest point from the Earth, known as the apogee, NASA said. So yeah, we've got kind of like all three of these cool lunar phenomenon happening all at the same time.
Yeah.
Is there anything to it? Meh, who knows?
Absolutely, there is.
Come
what
on,
I suggest is everybody get their assless chaps on and their chicken feet and your rabbit's foot.
Oh,
get
come
out
on.
there.
You can't beat some moon woo on Freaky Friday. I honestly do think there's a compelling case to be made. The only reason it's up there in its perfect orbit and its perfect shape, just to blank out the sun just so perfectly on eclipse days. I honestly think whoever terraformed this planet, yep, I went there, Joe. This planet was terraformed by.
Well, it was, dude. It was terraformed,
I'm
sure.
telling you, that moon is so essential to the life that as we know it here.
Sure.
I honestly think it was. It was engineered. It had to have been put there. It's too perfect. Just too perfect.
It's a projection.
You think so? I mean, I say that. Listen, I mean, I've got David Icke's book. It's The Moon Matrix, and he goes over various different kind of theories on the moon, and that's one of them.
Well, because like I said, you can't discount it.
No,
you can't discount it. But there's some problems with that. One of them being this. Get this. So, back at the 2000 or so, some scientists had launched a satellite, put mirrors on the moon, physical mirrors. Then they bounced a laser off it, and they figured out the lunar cycle to 1/10,000% accuracy. That was the margin of error. And then they could go back all the way back in time and figure out, what these events happened on what day, because the way most people kept records were due to the sun or due to the moon. And so, interestingly enough, they were able to validate a lot of historical events because of that. So how do you put mirrors on a projection? You can't. How do you bounce a laser off a projection? You don't. And so that kind of like, I poo-pooed that. But, what is the moon? How is it? I don't even think we can begin to understand the relationship that moon has to the earth and to humanity.
Well, I think it's very interesting because I watched the thing about Mars, right? And what I didn't realize about Mars, which was very interesting actually, is that every couple of million years or so, Mars gets thrown off its axis, like it starts to tumble. And I didn't know that, right? I just thought it rotated, and
Really?
But
it's not like a steady, constant rotation.
Yeah, it'll rotate, in a steady fashion for a while, but after a while, it like throws itself off and it tumbles until it's able to kind of like correct itself again.
Is that similar to the wobble we experience?
Scotty, yeah, but here's the interesting thing about it. The reason Mars tumbles like that is because it doesn't have a large enough moon to stabilize its axis, unlike the Earth, which does have a moon that can stabilize its axis. If we didn't have the moon there, the Earth would begin to tumble and have this erratic. It wouldn't be a stable rotation because the moon's pull on us keeps us lined up on our axis. So I found that interesting that I was just thinking, okay, so I kind of ran a scenario through my head. If somebody was to inhabit a planet and you wanted to make it livable, I would assume one of those criteria would be to make sure that it has a stable rotation, right?
Exactly.
So what would you need to do to stabilize the rotation of a planet? You would have to bring something in that could stabilize that rotation. I don't know. Just throwing it out there.
Well, the Chitauri, yes, the reptilian ones. I mean, the Zulu, is it Credo Mutwa, the Zulu leader, the spiritual leader? He talks about their mythology, their kind of origins story, where they brought the moon. The two brothers, the Chitauri, they had to actually bring the moon here. It was essential to what was going on Earth. So, I think there's something to this moon woo. The more that probably meets the eye.
Yeah, and so now here's the question is, was that the great cataclysm that happened on Mars where they had to evacuate? Was their moon destroyed?
Mm-hmm. And that would result in, obviously, a base camp being built in Egypt called Cairo, named after, Mars.
Just saying.
Just saying.
Just saying.
Tell you what, I don't know if there's a shred of truth to it, but we really do make a compelling case for this kind of stuff.
No doubt, man. No doubt. I mean, very circumstantial. Don't get me wrong, but there's just a ton of things that, well, I guess you could say a coinky dink, but of course, we don't.
Well, that's what good research is based on, asking questions like this, because it just makes you wonder, right? I don't know. It just was something that kind of stuck in my mind as I watched that thing about Mars, and it was interesting because this was kind of this was a mainline show, I think, on the Sci-Fi Channel, where they were talking about the planets and stuff like that, and they had talked about how they believe life existed on Mars. Of course, they kind of whitewashed it and only referred to the life as reaching like bacterial state at any given. But they said that life may have existed on Mars 4 different times. Like it existed, it was wiped out, it came back, it was wiped out again, it came back and was wiped out again. So there were like 4 different times in Mars's history where life had existed.
I wonder how the hell they come up with this, though. I mean, come on, it's like one of those things that you're reaching, unless of course Captain K came back with that, Randy Kramer or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting, but I think the most interesting information that came out of it, the most interesting information I think that came out of it, though, was the whole thing of its axis, just like how it just tumbles every couple million of years. Yeah, and
is it almost like a top that loses? How it loses its speed. How tops will lose its speed and then they start to wobble. Is it like that kind of tumble?
I know that they were talking about how the elevation in the northern hemisphere of Mars is much lower than the elevation in the southern hemisphere of Mars. And they say that's because whatever massive body that was about the size of our moon struck the planet, deformed the shape of Mars. And so the elevation is actually lower on the northern hemisphere of Mars than it is in the southern hemisphere, because a lot more of that matter was actually like broken off and just like completely crushed and thrown off of the planet. So I don't know.
Sounds similar to the story of Tiamat.
Yeah, it's very weird, and when it comes to the tumbling thing, I think what it is it's like it'll be rotating in a steady sort of manner for a while, and then it just kind of like starts tipping sideways, and next thing you know, like Mars is rotating sideways, and then it eventually like straightens back up and stabilizes again. I'm not really sure exactly how it kind of like restabilizes itself, but I just found it very interesting that they said that there's this cyclic pattern every couple million years of just Mars basically going completely out of whack and its axis being thrown off.
And of course, we had a big earthquake the other day, Scott, just off the Alaskan coast. It was 8.2 to start with. I think they downgraded it to 7.9. But I tell you what, coming only days after the missile alert in Hawaii, those people again were put on tsunami alert for a number of minutes. Okay, it didn't take too long to clear this one up, but that was a sizable earthquake, dude. And then you look at more earthquakes along the Californian coast. I think it was today. And, we've been talking about extraplanetary bodies and things like that tonight. And, I have to forgive people for increasing the talk on, is Nibiru on the way in? Because even the asteroids and things like that seem to be coming our way, they seem to be increasing in frequency as well.
I think I think the entire solar system, like I think our entire area of the galaxy is probably moving into an area of space that is a little more, I would say, hazardous. I think we're moving. I think our solar system is moving into like an excited zone of activity, within the universe, and so I think we're seeing a lot of the side effects of that, right? So, and then we also got to talk about the sun too. What's going on with the sun. I mean, it's all tied in. The Nibiru thing. I don't know if I don't think I'm so much convinced on that coming in because, like we've said before, all these people seem to be able to film it on their Samsungs and iPhones, but no amateur astronomers with expensive telescopes have been able to find it. So
exactly.
That makes me wonder.
That's the biggest problem I have. How come these things are only seen on YouTube? Why?
But
as far as moving it, yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, at the same time, I mean, I laugh and I mock some of these videos, and I can be a bit cruel sometimes, but, at the same time, I do think there is some Planet X out there, call it Nibiru if you want to go the Sumerian route. Definitely something, I think, from some kind of cyclical passerby, shall we say.
Richie J. Jones in the chat room says Planet Punani.
Well, you can call it what you want, but I mean, there's so many stories from ancient times, and we put a lot of weight behind the stories on the dragons and unicorns and things like that. So maybe we should pay more attention to petroglyphs of two suns in the sky and things like that, little indicators that maybe from time to time we do get a visitor.
Yeah, I think that there definitely is something to it, but I think it has been completely overblown and overhyped and taken to like a completely ridiculous level. Yeah, and it has taken away from maybe the more the more not so exciting truth of the matter, right? So
when Caltech got involved, because they were bringing almost a scientific perspective to this, the mainstream were talking about it. And they'd taken away the whole Nibiru aspect. They were just talking about an extraplanetary body that they honestly thought from their calculations should be out there. We had all the fanfare surrounding that. We'd been told all these institutes were pointing their radio telescopes looking for this thing, but still, we've had no answers. Now, I would imagine with the amount of telescopes and computing power that went into that, the minute that release came out, if they haven't found that on its projected orbit path by now, I don't know if they're ever going to find it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. And like I said, I do think that there was something to those Sumerian stories, right? With the Anunnaki.
I mean, they observed it. Look at the Mayans. The Mayans possessed unbelievable knowledge about the stars and talked extensively. The Aztecs, the South American civilizations, all talked about this. And now, of course, tomorrow there's going to be, L.A. Marzulli is going to come out with the results of the elongated skull DNA testing.
2nd of February, Joe. 2nd of February.
2nd of February. That's right. So,
he came out tonight and he had confirmed, exclusive. He didn't get into the DNA results, but he was saying that they have conclusive evidence that this is structural differences in these skulls to the ones of humans. And that means we're not talking about the binding that we often hear about.
Right.
And it's also morphologically different from the human skull as well. Now, obviously, he couldn't go into the DNA evidence that they have actually gathered together. But I would imagine if he gave us that as a teaser, well, he said himself, this could really open a new chapter in human history.
I can't see how that could be swept under the rug.
No, same here. Absolutely. It's a game changer, right?
Too profound. Yeah, I would think so.
But then look at the likes of Graham Hancock, who had his material removed from TED Talk, stuff like that. I think his take on history, his archaeological investigations and stuff like that,
is no less valid than any scientific theory.
I think it takes us a lot closer to what actually happened, to be honest with you, Joe.
Hey.
So it's going to be interesting to see.
Oh, the final segments here of Freaky Friday and your protection from deception. Truth Frequency Radio, TFRlive.com. Don't forget, coming up in just about a half hour, the Geos go beyond the veil. Talking about CERN, particle accelerators, all sorts of good stuff. You can also check them out live on their YouTube channel. If you like to see a little video action, they bring it to you live as well, and also on their Facebook. So good night ahead still once Freaky Friday concludes. So this half hour, we're going to get into zombies and zombie-like behavior. But before we do, speaking of zombie-like behavior, what the hell is going on with these teens eating Tide Pods? Now, I thought this was just a meme type of joke that was going on. I didn't realize that teens were actually eating these things. They are. And according to Fox News, teens eating more Tide Pods than ever, despite efforts to stop the trend. What?
I think Scott Lopez sums it up best. Scott, come on, tell us what this is all about. 2 words.
Help me.
Hashtag nature's eugenics.
Yeah, no doubt. And, you know, Scotty, I got to tell you, I don't quite disagree with you, because if by the time you're a teenager, you don't know the detrimental effects of your health, to your health, that eating detergents would have, you get what you deserve. So it says, despite efforts by Procter & Gamble, Amazon, and YouTube to stop teenagers from eating the highly poisonous Tide Pods, the American Association of Poison Control Centers reported the number of exposure cases to the detergent has skyrocketed. The AAPCC reported 39 cases of teens being exposed to the detergent in Tide Pods in 2016 and 53 in 2017. However, the agency reported that there's been 86 cases from January 1st to January 21st of 2018 alone. The agency set out a warning that the intentional exposures continue to rise. And just understand, these Tide Pod things are extremely harmful to your health. The Poison Control Centers say, we cannot stress enough how dangerous this is to the health of individuals. It can lead to seizure, pulmonary edema, respiratory arrest, coma, and death. It says if you or a loved one misuses a laundry packet or has a question about the risk of exposure to one, call the Poison Help hotline. So,
oh my God!
What the hell's going on, dude?
How did we end up here? How the hell did we end up eating?
Exactly. In the 1990s, remember, Dare used to say, "Come on, kids, don't smoke crack." 2018, Dare's probably out there. Come on, kids, stop eating laundry detergent.
I mean, if this is what it takes to make you cool in school nowadays, just don't be cool.
Do you see why? We homeschool our children? I'm telling you, this. Oh, I can't believe it. A friend of mine on Facebook, his daughter had a tragic accident, and she fell off a horse and fell on her head. And she's very lucky that she wasn't paralyzed, but there is damage. She went back to school. Do you know that they freaking made fun of her and ridiculed her because now she's dealing with some issues that she has to rehab through, and some brain damage possibly, and they make fun of her. I was like, huh. And I mean, we've all dealt with it because we went to school, and I mean, I got to tell you, I I can say that I probably took part in behavior like that, and I'm ashamed. But that's what it took sometimes to become to be accepted. And I mean, I can't believe that people are eating flipping Tide Pods, dude.
Scott got it right, and it sounds harsh, but it is. It's nature's way of dealing with things.
Yeah,
you know,
survival of the fittest.
Sounds horrible. It's like
I mean, I guess you could say this is. I guess you could say that this is the gene pool cleaning itself.
Oh, boom, boom. I mean, it's like these people who you see standing on the beach, the lonely guy down there filming the tsunami coming in. I mean, nature has a way of dealing with stupidity like that. It really, really does. And it does sound harsh, but I mean, the Tide Pod Challenge, whatever they call it, I mean, Bill Gates must be kicking himself. He must have thought, why didn't I think of this sooner? We could put memes like this out.
Who has blood on their hands? That's what I want to know. Who is the person that did this? Because they probably thought, ha, 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 very funny. I'm going to make this meme. Didn't probably think people would do it. And now look what's happened. Jesus, could you imagine if they decide one day to say, well, this was a problem. Let's go back and find the guy that started all this. And they have the technology to do that.
It's like cult-like behavior, though, isn't it? Because, I mean...
Yeah, man.
They're seeing others doing it of their age and everything else. And although, despite the dangers, I mean, they're still almost brainwashed into doing this, thinking...
and that's how all these stupid challenges happen that you see on social media. You know, you had, like... the one I remember that kind of, like, became the big thing were all these, like, challenges... kind of like started from, at least that I know of, was like the water bucket challenge or the the ice water.
Yeah.
And you know, I guess that was supposedly started for a good cause, I guess, you know, to raise awareness to some medical condition or something like that. But then it just got crazy after that. And, you know, I guess the thing is you do the challenge and then you tag people in your friends list and then they have to do the challenge. So I guess with the way society is right now with the young kids or whatever, the teens, you know, if you get tagged in the post, then you're kind of like, you're pressured to do it, right? You know, if you don't do the challenge and you were tagged in it, then I guess, I don't know what, you get ridiculed or made fun of or whatever. Or, you know, he was too much of a pussy to do the challenge. And so I don't know. It's ridiculous. And yeah, I mean, these challenges are getting stupider and more dangerous. You know, like I said, it started out maybe as like for a good cause or something, but now it's just absolute. You know, it's endangering people's lives, and yet, you know, it's these young people that are engaging. It's just ridiculous.
And you know, Joe, let me put this to you, because social media, obviously, it's a very, very big part of this. And even now, the likes of this, Scott there was talking about tagging people, things like that, but even the likes that people get, the likes and shares, I mean, they're willing to risk their own health to be videoed so they can upload it to Facebook, and I'm sure they get some kind of subconscious buzz, some dopamine release, the more and more shares they get.
Yeah, they interviewed a 16-year-old who did it, right? He did the Tide Pod thing or whatever. And they asked him, why did you do it? You know, what was going through your mind? Why did you do that? And he said, I wanted to see how many likes I could get on Facebook and how many people I could get me to follow me on Twitter. And that was his whole reason for doing it.
Unbelievable, guys. I'm again just floored that parents, where are you? That's all I gotta say. Teach your children, don't eat Tide Pods if you value their lives, and if you think that there's even a shred or remote possibility that they may fall prey to peer pressure as a result of this.
I mean, the people doing this, the youngsters, the teenagers doing this, they're going to be the parents soon.
I know, that's what's scary,
next generation again.
But don't get me wrong, dude. We did stupid stuff as teenagers.
Yeah, I know, but come on, dude. We would never have started drinking like detergent or stuff like that.
No. Well, I mean, huffing paint, stuff like that. You know, there was times, you know, but still,
Of course, you know, the thing is though, I would say people like me and Joe and Kev and all that. I think we were kind of hardwired to go against what was popular.
Yes,
right?
very,
So
very much
peer
so.
pressure. Peer
Indeed.
pressure didn't really have an effect on me.
No,
Whatever all the cool kids were doing, I was completely doing the opposite and not having any involvement in it
Yes.
whatsoever. So a lot of it comes down to personality types. Are you a sort of are you easily
Are you an A or a B? Absolutely, I get it. Yep.
exactly. So I think a lot of that has to play into it as well. And, you know, it's like herd mentality, right? So you get a bunch of people jumping on this bandwagon and this thing, and it becomes sort of a pop culture thing going around on social media. Then
Yep.
you just get people jumping on the bandwagon and doing
I'm
it.
telling you,
So,
folks, a great book doesn't cost much on Amazon. You can get it in paperback. You can probably get it ebook too, but The Crowd by Gustave Le Bon, 19th century psychoanalyst, basically explained the crowd mentality, the herd, if you will, but the crowd as it applies to your identity. And that's the thing that you often find is that these events happen because they're doing things where they're identifying themselves with these groups that do this kind of stuff. It's an unbelievable thing. But if you want to learn more about that kind of group think, this was the cutting edge book that really started to unlock the understanding of how humanity functions outside of being an individual. So that's very interesting. Now, with that said, how does it affect, or what do you have on this zombie behavior? Because that we've been seeing much more as well.
yes, speaking of zombie-like behavior, I have an interesting article here. Once again, mysteriousuniverse.org. Scientists warn bizarre zombie disease could soon appear in humans. Many of humanity's worst epidemics have begun when infectious diseases make the jump from animals to humans. The Black Death, one of the deadliest pandemics in the history of human civilization, was spread when oriental rat fleas living on rats began infecting humans with the Yersinia pestis bacteria they were carrying. Throughout the past decade, many types of bird and swine flu have jumped from animals to humans, causing deadly outbreaks in many parts of the world. Now, scientists in North America are growing increasingly concerned about the risk of a bizarre zombie disease being transmitted to humans through the consumption of infected animal meat. It's time. Is it time to give veganism a shot? Authorities from Colorado to Missouri have been detecting evidence of a widespread outbreak of chronic wasting disease, or CWD, in deer across the United States. The disease attacks the brain through the introduction of prions, a type of highly infectious misfolded protein which causes nearby proteins in the brain tissue to misfold as well. This causes all sorts of neurological damage, eventually leading to a zombie-like state in which animals walk in repetitive set patterns, avoid other animals, and generally become listless and catatonic until brain function ceases altogether. While the disease has so far been confined to deer, elk, and caribou, there are signs that it is adapting to spread to new areas of the animal kingdom, possibly even to humans. Canadian researchers discovered that CWD can spread to primates who eat infected deer meat, and now American scientists are worried that the popularity of deer meat in many rural areas means chronic wasting disease might soon turn unsuspecting venison eaters into veritable zombies. Matt Dunphy, head of the Chronic Wasting Disease Alliance in Colorado, says that while scientists have so far been comforted by the fact that the species barrier has prevented the spread of this zombie disease to humans, recent data show that the barrier might not be quite as robust as we once thought. Given that deer to primate transmission is a relatively recent phenomenon, scientists fear that some strains of the disease might be very close to jumping to humans. You might want to think twice about that venison festival next weekend. So interesting.
I love venison. Come on, dude. You can't take venison.
I know. I love it too. I love venison.
But you see, this is how it happens. This is how it happens, folks. Many people out there mock the whole zombie thing, but look at that. In the food chain,
It could very well happen.
there you go, Joe, and it could happen. And it said at the start there that scientists fear a zombie outbreak, and look around you. Can we make a case for it already having started a long time ago?
Back in 2005, there was that presentation that was given to the Pentagon on something called FunVax, right?
Yeah.
Which basically turned people into zombies because it shut off the area of the brain that dealt with spirituality and what they considered fundamentalism, right? It basically made people apathetic, docile. Could we be seeing something like that? Because we still see, again, the grids in the sky, the chemtrails, we've lived with it for years now. People have become accustomed to it. We have no choice but to go about our daily routines. We can't live locked up in your house with HEPA filters and all sorts of filtration going. It's just not possible. This is yet again another thing that they do. Did anybody ask us anything? Did anybody put out some sort of, request for public comment? No, nothing like that. They just went about their merry way, doing things and manipulating the environment to advance agendas and to further business aspirations and things like that. But is it out of the realm of possibility that instead of putting barium or strontium or aluminum aerosols in there, they just put FunVax in there and And next thing
I'm sure with this, was it chronic wasting disease or whatever virus this is? I'm sure they have a nice sample of it sitting at the National Bioagro Defense Laboratory, just down the road from me, in Manhattan, Kansas. Because that's their job. That's their job. How
does that make you facility feel? Do you sleep easy at night because of that? Knowing that at least it'll be quick.
Every time I think of that place, dude, it freaks me out just knowing that it's literally like about an hour drive away from here. But no, I mean that used to be Plum Island. That's where they're moving. Plum Island is where it's going to be right in the middle of the breadbasket of the United States, right, Kansas, because they said that's where they're going to be researching all of the animal diseases and all of the ways that they can, quote unquote, protect our food.
Right. Well, a lot of evidence suggests that Lyme disease was a government engineered disease.
Exactly.
That, of course, came from Plum Island. Now, one of the major pests that infest deer are ticks. And isn't that interesting that here you go, you have a government engineered disease that infects the pest that is most common. Any deer hunter out there knows that, these deer are just riddled with ticks. And could this be the result of, a chain reaction of human intervention into the natural process to where here we go, we insert this new disease into the system. And could this be a side effect of that? Could this be more of that blowback damage? I mean, damn.
It makes you wonder. It does. It makes you wonder, man. And I don't know. Like I said, I'm sure they have a nice sample of it over there in Manhattan, Kansas, and I'm sure it's already weaponized. And if it wasn't created there to begin with, So
I mean, that's just unbelievable.
These scientists are not stupid, right? Far from it. They're some of the most intelligent people in the world. And that begs the question why they move it from somewhere remote, like Plum Island, to inland near Scotty. I mean,
Yeah, like right in the middle of the country, smack dab, almost like, is that like, could it be strategic? You know, maybe that's one of the hardest places to hit because it's dead center in the middle of the country. Yeah, I don't know if it's that, or maybe it's ground zero for a good dispersal.
It's an above ground facility in an area that gets F5 tornadoes.
Oh, so that's good. That's a good thing. That's almost like building nuclear reactors on a fault line.
Yes.
Oh, we've never done that before. Yeah. Unbelievable, dude.
What's wrong
Just
with
saying.
What is wrong with them?
I don't know. I'm just kind of this is why, you know, folks, it's so important to have these Freaky Friday style discussions with people, because look at what comes out just as a result of just talking about this, is that you really do come to the conclusion that, wow, we are so much smarter than the vast majority of humanity. And I don't say that arrogantly, but I'm saying that all of you out there that are listening, you already are you're 10 steps ahead of the rest of those that decidedly stay plugged into the matrix. And I applaud each and every one of you for doing so, because it's a very hard thing to do due to the fact that it alienates you from, again, much of the population. But I can tell you that those that are left, those that are seeking, that seek to understand, that choose to think and operate outside of the box, outside of the construct, the relationships that you forge with these people of similar mindset and ilk are unbelievably strong and have significant power behind it. These relationships are almost like entangling photons, you know, or quantum particles. We really have to do more of that entangling.
Well, you know, Joe, let me put it to you this way, because, you know, me, not an expert on the Bible at all, but one thing I do know it talks about in there, right? And this isn't going all religious, because I just look at it as an ancient text to anyone who isn't Christian. It talks about the 144,000, right? And people assume that you all have to be quite badge-wearing Christians to be a part of that rapture or whatever. But I'm starting to think, you know, that it might seem like a small number, 144,000, when you look at the whole planet, 7 billion. But, you know, none of us will ever be truly awake. But I honestly think the likes of this audience and everyone else out there around the planet who are asking questions, who are having conversations like this, you know, I wonder how much we do number. Because maybe that's the number maybe that's what we're talking about, dude.
I believe that that's a literal number. The interesting thing about it is that that number is confirmed with the Great Pyramid, because the Great Pyramid, if you look at it from the standpoint that Enoch brought back the plans and Enoch facilitated the building of the Great Pyramid, one of the key, and there's plenty of numerological dimensions and evidence to support this, but one of the main ones is it was encased in 144,000 encasing stones to match that. Because remember, if you go by the way the Enoch line of thought, the Great Pyramid of Giza is a direct representation of New Jerusalem. And it's basically a monument of God's promise if you go down that road. And all the dimensions seem to fit biblical prophecy in Revelation. So it's kind of like, here's the written, here's my physical monument, the promise. And one of the key numerological features of it was the 144,000 encasing stones. Now, with that said, yes, I do believe that those people don't even know that they're those people. But you can identify them by what they do. And, you know, all of you listening tonight, you're those, I firmly believe you're those people, the ones that are doing the good works, that are fighting against the system that unjustly violate our natural rights. That, my friends, is what makes you a tool and a power and a force to be reckoned with. And that's why a lot of you out there that go down that road get a lot of pushback on a spiritual front and, you know, on the physical front here. And I applaud you all for doing it. I really do. It's a tough road to go down. But, you know, at the end of the day, our time on this rock is, I mean, a literal drop in the bucket compared to the big picture.
There is no time, Joe. There is no time.
No, we're out of time. Damn it. Can you believe it already, dude? 3 hours come and gone.
It's been a pleasure. I love it when you're able to join us. It's like we go old school again, isn't it, Scott? I mean, it's great when it's the two of us and we have people. When it's the two of us and we have people. When it's the two of us and we have people. When it's the two of us and we have people. When it's the two of us and we have people. When it's the two of us and we have people. When it's the two.